So these people will find whatever you enjoy. They'll seek it out and they'll destroy it. You have to gatekeep. There's some things you should learn about SJWs. Like there should be a class, but honestly, if you try to do it on YouTube, eventually they just kick off your channel. But one of the things is you got to gatekeep, and that immediately will trigger them. And you have to say, this is just not all things for all people. This is for our protection. It's that 4-panel meme you've seen of some people go off and you create something. Usually a group of guys, usually white guys, go off and they create something cool, and then the SJWs come along and say, yo, you need to include us, and then you also need to just give us power because it's not equality, it's equity, it's the end stage. And then they seize power, they slowly, and then they just change it till it's no longer recognizable, and you start losing your audience. And they kick out the people who created the very thing. They created it, and they kick it out, and you look at it now, it's like it's completely changed, and you ruined it. You got to gatekeep right from the start. And the other thing about SJWs is you never apologize to them. In fact, you don't engage with them if you don't have to. You got to get real comfortable with just blocking people on social media, all these SJWs who are just coming there to troll. And you have to normalize that concept of you block them, and then if they continue to kind of try to want to engage with you, it kind of changes the burden because they're blocked now, so they so they can't see your posts. So then it makes them look like a stalker, which if they continue and engage, it's like, well, they are a stalker because you blocked them. So gatekeeping, keeping these people out because they will just do this. They just repeat this thing all over again. It's like when you see somebody who makes a little faux pas on social media, and they start was it Chelsea Kane with her comic about like werewolf cat girls or something like that, and she just started apologizing, and then she left Twitter and she just lost her mind. It's like, why are you engaging with mentally ill bad actors, which is what most of them are. If you just block them, and every time someone is bringing it to your attention, you block them. It's like, let's be like, this social media. It's not serious. It just is letting people know, oh yeah, I'm not going to engage with you on that topic. I'm just going to block you on Twitter. I don't even use Twitter because it's cancer, but you get the idea. And I'm talking about for people who are in this position. I mean, it's not like we don't have to do this kind of stuff because we're not in the position where a bunch of snowflake pussies are going to come along and talk like that, and like talk like SJWs. Like we don't even have that. We don't even have that type of dialogue with each other because you just call each other a bunch of pussies, and that will kind of be the end of it. And the thing is, nobody on our side of the aisle would go into a thing and say, oh, this is very offensive. This is very offensive to me. I don't feel safe in your community. Because you just look at me like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I'm not holding the gun to your head. You don't have to be here. It's some comic book or some VTuber or somebody's, Hogwarts Legacy. It's like somebody's playing that game and they find it offensive. It's like nobody's forcing you you have to come here. It's like none of this makes sense. It's this whole shift that I kind of noticed happened in the 80s and the 90s where instead of people accept the things you can't control, they're trying to change other people's behavior. And you're seeing it really now with the compelled speech, with the pronoun stuff. It's like that is a mask off thing where they're saying like, yeah, we're going to use social conditioning to compel your speech, to make you say words that you don't agree with. How well is that going to catch on? I don't know. So what happens is Disney censors Scrooge McDuck for the snowflakes because Disney. And the stuff with Disney and anything that you used to enjoy is it's all over. And I'm not some, exaggerated hyperbolic statement. All this stuff, all these corporations are fully on board this. The old Disney that you might have remembered from, I guess I would say it peaked in the 80s, and all the comic books and whatever the old, the movies you enjoyed, all that stuff is over. This is the new cultural Marxist propaganda for the next few years until something comes along to change it. It'll be stuff like Comicsgate will come along. It'll be a little bit politically incorrect. And, it's like, really, it's the financing that's the issue because, like if you get debanked, well, then you can't do business. But I suspect that we'll probably get around that issue. Someone will get around that issue, possibly by creating their own thing or with through acts of law to prevent discrimination based on political beliefs. Because you're looking at all this kind of stuff where you have this entire group of people who want to live in this nerfed universe where everything is just soft and soylent and safe and really boring. You've removed the spice. It's one of the problems of multiculturalism and diversity is you have to remove anything offensive. If you have a group of 4 different people and you have 4 different people to be 4 different groups to be offended, well, then you have to remove the jokes or the humor or the content that touches on those 4 different groups. And so what are you left with? Oh, you're just left with a rice cake. It's nothing. It's all things to all people, and nobody out of the 4. It's like Leslie Headland was talking about Star Wars. I think she said we're leaving money on the table if we don't put all these different groups representation in Star Wars stories. And everyone was looking at that and go, you know better. We know that you know that this isn't how business models work. You don't gain a new audience by putting a potpourri, a cornucopia of different stuff in there. You lose the old core audience and you lose everything. And you look at Star Wars, like, yeah, that's what happened. How well is Andor Star Wars doing? How well did Solo do? It's like you're losing. How well did, God, what was some of the other Eternals do? I think that was one with the two BLT guys, and there was I don't know, there was another, there's a couple other Star Wars shows that has some, I think it was Pixar. So what's that one with Buzz Lightyear? They did that, but they did it without the guy, the main guy, Tim the tool guy, whatever. They're not leaving money on the table by trying to be all things all people. It's like this is just cultural Marxist gaslighting. They're lying to you. You're losing your old audience. You see it with comics. You see it with Disney now. You see it with a lot of stuff. I mean, the only solution is to sidestep this, like Comicsgate the world, where it's like a small group of people create their own industry to get around these these mentally ill soy boys. So what happened is Disney sent down Rosa. Disney, what, God, such enjoyable comic books. Even the old ones that were superly politically incorrect, where they go to some Pacific island and they depict the Pacific Islanders a little bit, it was, a little bit much, but it's a slice of time. It's like you write something in the 40s or 50s, that's the way it's going to be. Everyone gets that. And I remember reading a reprint of one of the Scrooge McDuck's comics, and this was probably reprinted in the 70s and 80s from an earlier comic, where they had a joke about a Scotsman, because I think he's from Scotland, his purse and his parsimonious nature. And they rewrote the joke, but they explained in the beginning or the end of the comic, they go, the original joke was, and they explained the joke, it was about a Scotsman watching his purse strings very carefully. And so they rewrote it for something else. I want to insert a joke in here, but I'm not going to, obviously, because that would be the last joke you say on YouTube. And that was like in the 70s and 80s where they rewrote that little bit of humor. So the thing is, they shouldn't have. It's like you should just leave things alone. If it's written in 1952, it's a little slice of time. You could just leave it alone, and people will adapt and adjust. And if they see something they don't like, it's like, well, that was a slice that we're not going to judge things by modern standards, because you look in the future, and go, oh, they're going to judge us, aren't they? So we should probably be very tolerant right now to stuff written, 80 years ago. Anyway, so what happened was Disney is censoring Scrooge McDuck for the snowflakes because Disney. So they're nuking two of the old comics. The one I saw, because it had a character called Bombi the Zombie, which wasn't anything. I don't know if I can show it, but it wasn't anything offensive. It was just a drawing of a creepy character who was supposed to either be a zombie or the zombie master. But it wasn't anything that would catch your attention. You'd look at it and you go like, oh, this is clearly a stereotypical caricature of someone from this region of the world. It wasn't that. It was just nothing special. But Google Tube is so nuts now that I don't even want to show it, because some pussy finds it offensive, and that's that. So all the characters in the comic are anthropomorphic, ducks, geese, dogs, whatever. They're not. I don't think there's any human depictions. It's. I mean, Disney's like where they had like a dog has a pet dog. An anthropomorphic dog has a canine pomorphic dog. Okay. So it shows a zombie guy dressed up in his feathers and bone type of costume, which is pretty common around the world, including with witch doctors around the world. Like witch doctors aren't just located in Africa, but here, I mean, literally, like your European ancestors also had the equivalent of witch doctors who also were wearing bones and feathers and all that kind of like. Oh no! Only the American Indians dress like that. No, you think? Do you really? Do they think that people around the world, Eurasians, bypass that step in development? Why would you think that? Are you familiar with physical cultural anthropology at all? Anyway, so here's how the left wing works. If you see a witch doctor and you draw a picture of them, bones, feathers, face paint, whatever type of stuff, the liberal sees it and they lose their freaking minds, screaming about how it's an offensive stereotype and all the Marxist hot words, and then you show them the picture of the real guy. And what are they? They look at it like, oh, I still feel like I should be offended. You're still istophobic somehow. Like, I can't be, because istophobicism is power and privilege, and I don't have any. So to the left-wing folks, everything is an issue. They have to virtue signal about every little thing because they're angry and scared about everything all the time. They are constantly looking for things to whine about so they can get some of that sweet dopamine on Twitter, which literally is a drug. It's if you have one of these heavy Twitter users, and Twitter goes down for the day, or something happens, they get locked out of their account, they will go through a little bit of a withdrawal. So how many pictures of the past 3 years did you see of people who are wearing, I'll say, panties on their face and their icon pictures on social media? You know, they're at home, they're taking a selfie, but they put the safety panties on their face to take the picture. Then they take it off afterwards. Why exactly? Because they need to send the message that they're in the middle of the herd, that they're on board the current narrative. I support the current thing. And the panties on the face and washing your hands and all that kind of stuff was 2019ish, and then Ukraine became the next big thing, and I don't know. I think UFOs after that. I don't know where we are. What level? I wake up and there's a psych op, and I named the anyway. So Disney is censoring the duck, and as I covered yesterday, a publisher is censoring older books. Those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. Yeah, of course. But if you look at the comics, cartoons, books, and music that our generation and earlier had access to, compared to recently, it's like two different worlds. There was still stuff that was sneaking in the cracks in the 80s. Like they had tried to clean up most of the stuff in the 80s, and by the 90s, I think they had totally cleaned up all the cartoons. But in the 80s, there was still stuff that was like some of the earlier, very politically incorrect cartoons would sneak in. So I mean, what I'm trying to say is like we had such a different environment. If you had access to some of those comic books and cartoons, it's like, oh, that's life. That's just different people. Like that's we're respecting diversity of thought, diversity of cultures. It's like, well, the past is its own diverse culture. It's like, what happened to tolerating that? Like, no, we need to edit and censor it. So what kind of kids develop when they're protected from everything the modern SJWs consider politically incorrect? Is the past going to be just a closed book? Yeah, that's exactly what is happening. Over the past few years, they've been tearing down statues, icons, removing classic books, defacing signs, even digging up graves to remove Confederate soldiers, and of course editing books by sensitivity readers who are all insane. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, in the hopes that they can get help. I remember them tearing down statues of like Abe Lincoln or something, or people who are helping in the Underground Railroad, or something honoring like the black soldiers in World War II or Korea or Vietnam or something. And you look at him, it's like, so you deface this icon, this printed, the 3D relief thing honoring these soldiers, this regiment or something. Do you know who those guys were? And they look at you like you have two heads. They don't like those kids would be really ticked off if they could read, but the truth is half of them can't, and like they don't know a history book because like school is just a babysitter. They're not learning anything. I mean, like to be fair, most of them are so far the left of the bell curve that school's kind of a waste of time for most of them. Anyway, so the thing is, the sensitivity readers go through and correct all this stuff, and they're nuts. They're nuts. You can read their bios, and it's just this long litany of all the imaginary ailments that they think they have. It's all nonsense, but it gives them validation so they can see themselves as marginalized and oppressed and have a place on the oppression hierarchy. It's bizarre because it's like a cult. They create this religion out of this soy-filled raw materials of cultural Marxism and jerking off to the writings of, Marx or Bernstein or Engels or all those just the communist dialectic predicts it's going to work, but it's all theory that has been shown over the past 100 years to never work. It'll work this time. It's all a fictional universe. It's a house of cards built on sand. And the thing is, it's very obviously all first world problem stuff. Are they worrying about pronouns in Zimbabwe? No, they're trying to avoid being eaten by a lion or gored by the elephant in the field who's eating their corn, which in turn will lead to their starvation. Pour one out for Rhodesia, which soon will be pour one out for South Africa. So the Bolshis are enjoy those 12-hour rolling blackouts. Like, we need to pump water for the fields. Like, everyone's going to be starving in a few years. Yep. So the Bolshis are scrubbing history as fast as possible. And yes, even a comic book is a piece of history. It's just a little tiny slice of space-time. But then these worms come along and edit it so as not to offend the brainwashed commie kids. So eventually everything is going to be offensive, except, of course, for attacking the fair-skinned Christian types. You can always go after blonde, red hair, green, or blue eyes. That is always acceptable. And Christianity, of course. Christianity for sure. The other two Abrahamic religions, nope, not so much. That will get you instantly deplatformed. So that also destroys the willing suspension of disbelief, and of course is insanely anti-white. It's also stochastic terrorism, which is a much more serious issue, which is why you're seeing so many of these anti-white attacks against people. As you see in the news, the media tries to cover it up, but thank God we have alt media to show you this. because the media is directing all your hatred against this one group of people. Like, I know people are seeing this stuff. I know people are waking up to it. And like, conversations are not going to happen on YouTube. They'll happen elsewhere on Odyssey and Bit Chute. And, so, okay, that was in 1949. The thing is, even for 1949, that was a pretty mild depiction of a zombie, either a zombie or zombie master or something. That wasn't anything crazy. But, like, as you saw from yesterday, they were removing colors they're editing out colors for people. Or colors for clothing, or colors in general, like black and white colors, or I don't know if those are colors, but whatever, you get the idea. Because that's how sensitive the sensitivity readers are. You go, well, yeah, there's a schism between us and them where, like, this is clearly isn't working out. There's such a divergence of opinion. Unfortunately, they control almost all the pop culture, which is where you see the power of things like Comicsgate. You're going to need to see Comicsgate expand. And I mean, the thing is, a lot of this deals with homeschooling. You're going to need to see homeschooling expand, or small-based little neighborhood schools. Where I'm not saying, like, you got to be teaching, like, some hardcore right-wing stuff. I mean, it'd be sweet if you did, it'd be based, but to just not teach this far left-wing stuff, or teach about the true horrors of Bolshevism, the history of Bolshevism, to teach about communism, because communism is the real threat. I mean, you're seeing it repeat right now. It's not like the far right is never an issue. It's always going to be it's always going to be this globalist threat. And you break the cycle of propaganda by just removing them from that Bolshevik government school propaganda, and the mainstream, media propaganda, which is like, it's weird. The mainstream media and the government, it's on the same, the derp state. It's weird how they're on the same page. They're pushing out the same narrative. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. Anyway, join us over at Subscribestar for the low fee of $2 a month, or join YouTube. Get yourself I think it's 99 cents. Get yourself a name of color in the comment section, or the live streams. You get a name of color and you get a star next to your name. Some people like that. Anyway, I'll see you guys all next episode.